Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Langayate Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ananda Bihariji, would you please do us the great favor of putting our verses in the chat so we know what we're going to be reading?
Okay. 1027. 1027.
1027. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that up for us. And I will share my screen. You said it's Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10?
Yes, chapter 20, verse 7.
Oh, it's just one verse. Chapter 20, the rainy season and autumn in Vrindavan. Wow, we are moving along.
Yeah, it's a very poetic chapter.
Verse 7, you said?
Yes.
Okay, the rainy season in Vrindavan. To enhance the description of Lord Krishna's pastimes, Sri Shukadev Goswami describes in this chapter the beauty of Vrindavan during autumn and the rainy season. In the course of his presentation, he gives various charming instructions in metaphorical terms. Srila Prabhupada wrote a book about this chapter. He conceived of the book, actually, even before he came to America, but it wasn't published till later. Anybody know the name of that book?
I know he was supposed to go to Japan for a conference.
Yes.
But he ended up not going, and there was an article that or speech that he prepared. So that later became the book.
What was the name of the book?
Light of the Bhagavatam.
Light of the Bhagavat. Light of the Bhagavat, yes. And I don't know if... I wonder if this book is here in Vedabase. Yeah, Light of the Bhagavat. You have it here, but one of the things that you miss by reading it is that it was meant to be, the illustrations were a big part of it. So Srila Prabhupada had a conference he was going to go to in Japan. So Srila Prabhupada was still in India. He hadn't come to America yet, hadn't left India. And he had this mission of trying to preach, share Krishna consciousness all over the world. And he had some opportunity to go to Japan. And he thought, what is relevant in Japanese culture? And he was thinking about nature, and he was thinking about art. And he had this idea of translating this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam in a way where you can describe the beauty of the autumn season with all of these lessons of spiritual life. And he would contract or get an artist to make these beautiful, 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 beautiful paintings and images to go along with it. Yeah, you can kind of see, here are some of the images that you can kind of find. These beautiful images in these so these images were created later. These weren't the original images that Srila Prabhupada contracted before coming to America. So it was Prabhupada wrote it, and then the images were created later. I don't even know if the images were created during Prabhupada's time or if they were afterwards. But the idea that he had was that create art in this beautiful Japanese style that would be appreciative and relative to the Japanese people, and then correlate it with this beautiful chapter of Srila Bhagavatam. And so Srila Prabhupada was so forward thinking, so out of the box, even from before even coming to America. And so Light of the Bhagavad, it's a really, 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 really beautiful book. Henry said Tamal Krishna Maharaj had made them. And so it's a really, 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 really beautiful book that I encourage everyone to check out. Okay. And so, okay. Text 7. We got a little bit of a purport there. Let me move this down. Tapakrisha deva mida asidvarishasi mahi yataiva kam tapasas tanusam prapya tat phalam. Translation: the earth had been emaciated by the summer heat, but she became fully nourished again when moistened by the god of rain. Thus the earth was like a person whose body has been emaciated by austerities undergone for material purpose, but who again becomes fully nourished when he achieves the fruit of those austerities. This is text 7. So let's see if text... that's a different verse. Okay. So the earth had been emaciated by the summer heat, so it's very, 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 very hot, especially in the summer months of India. But she became fully nourished again when moistened by the god of rain. So this is why Krishna is, not why, but this relates to Krishna's name of Ganesham or Sham Sundar, the beautiful, 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 beautiful color Ganesham of a full, pregnant, deeply blackish blue rain cloud. It's not just a beautiful color, but it also represents Krishna's merciful nature. That just like we're being scorched, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shikshastakam describes the effects of chanting in the very first verse, Chetudarpada Marjanam, it cleanses the mirror of the mind, Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvaparam, it extinguishes the fire of material existence. So each of us are burning in our own way. We're burning through material sufferings, and it's the grace of Sri Krishna through the mercy of Guru that comes and extinguishes that fire through the grace of the holy name. Just like a monsoon cloud comes and dumps refreshing, cool water down on the land after a scorching summer heat. So, in addition to appreciating the beauty of Sri Vrindavan Dham and the beauty of nature, we can also correlate Krishna's qualities. The earth has been emaciated by the summer heat, but she became fully nourished again when moistened by the god of rain. Thus the earth was like a person whose body had been emaciated by austerities undergone for material purpose, but who again becomes fully nourished when he achieves the fruit of those activities. Also, just reading here, it sticks out to me that that no matter how intense life gets, Krishna's mercy is just one step away. That the devotees hold tremendous hope. I've been thinking of this verse, and maybe I read it last week. Maybe I read this verse last week by Rabindranath Tagore. Faith is the bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. In effect, the people who change our lives the most begin to sing to us while we are still in darkness. If we listen to their song, we will see the dawning of a new part of ourselves. Read that again. Faith is the bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. In effect, the people who change our lives the most begin to sing to us while we are still in darkness. If we listen to their song, we will see the dawning of a new part of ourselves. It's Rabindranath Tagore, Indian philosopher and poet. And so who feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. And so similarly for us, material life can be scorching us and can be scorching the world. But we hold the faith of Krishna's mercy. We experience it in microdoses in our life. And we know that even though the summer is burning, the monsoon is coming. And so Krishna speaks as much also in the Bhagavad Gita, Matrash Pashastu Kontaya, Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada, Agamad Paino Nityas, Tang Satikshasva Bharata, in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that happiness and distress come like the winter and summer seasons, and therefore we must learn to tolerate them. Let's see if I got that right. Matras parshash tu konteya shitoshna sukha dukada agam apaino nityas tang satikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. And so devotees understand that the genuine nature of the soul is Satchidananda, that we are eternally blissful. But being covered in these material bodies, we experience various types of happiness and distress, as in like a dream. And so devotees are able to step back from the triggers and the narratives of my material story that tell me life is good, life is terrible, everything's falling apart, nothing's going to work out, etc., that invoke all of the feelings of anxiety, depression, lamentation, fear, confusion that we experience. Lamentation about the past, anxiety about the future, and confusion in the present. All of these things, devotees recognize that this isn't my natural position. This isn't the way it's always going to be, and we hold that faith, and we start to settle into deeper wisdom. We start to settle into deeper wisdom. Krishna also speaks in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, beautiful verses relating to something very similar. He says, this is the third chapter, yeah. Let's see. I was just reading these verses. Yeah. Let's see. It was as ignorant, similar for that. So the sutta disrupt the minds of ignorant man. A learned person should not, rather by working the spirit devotion, engage in all sorts of activities. Yeah. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work and devotion and work for fruitive results. So the idea of being able to step back into deeper wisdom and not get triggered by my mind and my senses that automatically pull me towards a certain type of reaction in the world. But recognizing that I can pause and create space and settle into my deeper wisdom, knowledge of the absolute truth. Remind myself of my eternal nature. Remind myself of Krishna's promise and presence in my life. Remind myself of my eternal connection beyond whatever's going on and right here, right now, the stress and anxiety I've got going on in work, the interpersonal dynamics that I'm struggling with, the reputation that I fear is getting tarnished, the sense of being behind or failure or lack or whatever it might be, the struggles. I don't have to react to that. I have to deal with that. I have to face it. I have to confront it. But I don't necessarily have to react to it in the way that I may have in the past. And I can start to step back and situate myself in knowledge of the absolute truth. Knowledge of the absolute truth. And what, like, for example, why does Krishna say in the second chapter of the Gita that happiness and distress are like winter, summer seasons and we must learn to tolerate them? Not just because we become stoics and nothing matters and we're not bothered by anything, but because I recognize that there's a higher truth. There's more to life than this. This is not the all in all. If that was it, if material comfort was the all in all and that was the goal, then yeah, life would really, really stink. And that is tremendous reason for anxiety and suffering and lamentation and confusion and fear, because it's like, sorry, I banged on my thing. I'm so sorry. Because that's all there is, and it's being taken away. But devotees realize actually there's a greater treasure that's just coming, and this isn't even like I'm not growing in spite of this. I'm growing closer to Krishna because of this. That somehow this is Krishna's way of making me stronger, bringing me closer, and so just like the earth becomes emaciated by the summer heat, we also become emaciated by the scorching heat of material existence. But Bhava Maha Davagni Nirvapanam, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the Shikshastakam, the cooling rays of Krishna's names will be able to shine down upon us and nourish us again. And that is also explaining the importance of making sure that we are exposing ourselves to the cooling rays of Krishna's holy names and his mercy. Another effect of the holy names that Krishna gives in the Shikshastakam, Shreya Karyudava Chandrika Vitaranam, that it's like the cooling rays of the moon shining down on the white lotus of our hearts. And so we have to make sure that we are exposing ourselves to that cooling moonshine. And so sometimes the only strength we have is like a lizard, or like sometimes my dog, there's a few puppies here in the audience, and so I wanted to make some puppy analogies. Sometimes my dog will be in our living room and he'll be sitting in the floor right in the line of sunshine coming through the window. Like the sunshine is coming through in the window and there's like a sunny spot on the floor, and he'll be sitting right in that spot, just kind of sunbathing in the middle of the living room, you know? Or like a lizard might crawl itself under a rock and just sit in the sun to heat up. And similarly for us, that's all we have to do on a given day, is just crawl ourselves out from under the rock of whatever it is that we're going through, the challenge. And you know what? I'm just going to sit in the sunshine. I'm going to allow myself to soak up the moon rays of Krishna's holy name. And it's a lecture, it's a class, it's a kirtan, it's just reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't even have the strength to read, so I'm just going to put on a recorded tape of somebody. You know, there are tapes of Prabhupada's disciples reciting his books. And so as devotees, we have to just keep every day exposing ourselves to Krishna consciousness. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. What is the... I forget the order. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. I think it's Pada Sevanam, Archana Bandhanam, but I forget which order it's listed in. Pada Sevanam comes after Vishnu Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archana Bandhanam, Dasyam Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. Hearing, chanting, remembering, serving Krishna's feet, worshipping the deities, offering prayers, being a servant, being a friend, and offering one's full life. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated their life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for they have acquired complete knowledge. So whatever it looks like for us, every day, keep throwing yourself at Krishna. Keep throwing yourself at Krishna. Keep climbing out from underneath that rock of whatever we're going through, and just lay yourself down in front of the sun. Allow the cooling rays of the moonshine to shower down on you and open up and nourish the white lotus of the heart. Know that in the scorching heat of summer, the monsoon cloud is coming. Ghanasham is there for me. So these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful depictions of the autumn rainy season and the lessons that we gain from it. Okay, let's look at the chat. What's coming in the chat? Beautiful notes by Nanda Manjari. Thank you. Let's go ahead and read our purport. Purport. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows. You'll find this a lot. So this, after chapter 13, the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto and subsequent cantos were translated and commented on by his disciples. And so very often, they would go through Srila Prabhupada's books, and if there was a verse sometimes that Prabhupada quoted, they would use Prabhupada's translation if he quoted it in a purport or a class somewhere else, or they would reference Krishna book often to see what insight Prabhupada would have. So, in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows, quote. So the entire purport here is reference from Srila Prabhupada. Before the rainfall, the whole surface of the globe becomes almost depleted of all kinds of energies and appears very lean. Anybody ever feel like that sometimes? Depleted of all kinds of energies. After the rainfall, the whole surface of the earth becomes green with vegetation and appears very healthy and strong. Srila Prabhupada was asked if he could perform miracles. They said, can you turn bell metal into gold? And Srila Prabhupada's famous answer, anybody know what Prabhupada's famous answer was? Can you perform miracles? Can you turn bell metal into gold?
Happies into hippies into happies.
Yes, Prabhupada said, I've turned hippies into happies. That is my miracle. Hippies into happies. And they asked, what is a hippie? And then Srila Prabhupada said, you know better than me. He said something extraordinary. And so the transformation, after the rainfall, the whole surface of the earth becomes green with vegetation, appears very healthy and strong. Here a comparison is made to the person undergoing austerities for fulfillment of material desire. The flourishing condition of the earth after a rainy season is compared to the fulfillment of desires. Sometimes when a country is subjugated by an undesirable government, persons and parties undergo severe penances and austerities to get control of the government, and when they attain control, they flourish by giving themselves generous salaries. So Srila Prabhupada is commenting on a lot of the political upheaval in his time, and also throughout history. And he's also making a little bit of reference, not directly to this book. I'm not saying that Prabhupada read or knew of this book, but Animal Farm by George Orwell, talking about that oftentimes. And there's also Twilight Zone episodes that refer to the same, that the revolutionaries become the tyrants if the consciousness is not transformed. And so it's not the system of government, it's not not necessarily the policies that are in place, but is the consciousness that uses those systems and policies to exploit others because of the natural greed or envy or lack of spiritual consciousness in the heart. So therefore, the real revolution required to take place is a spiritual revolution. You know, His Holiness Radhanath Swami was once in an airport, and he was just kind of minding himself, appreciating the solitude of waiting for his flight to come, and somebody came up to him and in a seemingly challenging spirit, and they were a activist of sorts or a government official that was working for the betterment of the environment. And they said, what are you swamis and spiritualists doing for the environment? You know, there's so much pollution and problems in the world. What are you doing for the environment? And Maharaj said very beautifully, he said that, you know, each of us have our role to play in life. You know, each of us have our role to play in life, and we need people who are cleaning up the ocean and cleaning up forests and pushing for policy changes, etc. But he said, my job as a Swami is that I urge people to clean up the ecology of the heart, because it's the inner pollution that is manifesting itself in the outer pollution that we experience in the world. And he said, we can clean up all the rivers, we can reduce all the air pollution, we can get rid of all the plastic in the world and recycle everything and plant trees and restore the earth to its natural beauty. But if the ecology of the heart is polluted, it's just a matter of time before we mess it all up again. Because the consciousness of greed and self-centeredness and the avarice to consume and control and dominate is what got us here in the first place. And if we don't solve that problem, everything else is a temporary solution. But if we solve that problem, just the Govardhan Eco-Village, my wife, Rasika Gopi, she did her college thesis paper on the Govardhan Eco-Village and cultures of sustainability. And the whole thrust was that sustainability is a byproduct of spiritual culture. You can create policies and governmental procedures, etc., which is all good, but ultimately, if you live in a spiritual society and culture, it's just understood that there's a sanctity of life, respect for self, for others, for God, and for nature. And so the idea of Prabhupada mentioning here that when they can take control by giving themselves generous salaries, so Prabhupada's talking about this reference that sometimes revolutionaries become the tyrants if the consciousness is not transformed. And so similarly, if we want to solve the world's problems, we have to adopt a different consciousness than what got us here in the first place. And therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is glorified as the creating the revolution in society. I think Prabhupada even uses that word. If we go into the Srimad Bhagavatam the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna is talking about Vedas, talking about all the different incarnations at the very, 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 very end. And so, yes, I think it's here. No? After extracting cream of all. Where is that verse that talks about creating a revolution in society? Bhagavatam, revolution in society. There's a verse. Anybody know where that verse is? I thought it was here at the end of the third chapter.
In the beginning of every Bhagavatam, Tadbhag Vishargo Janatava Vipalo Yasmin Pratishloka Bhajabhatipi. Those words that do not glorify the Lord are like a place of pilgrimage of clothes. And then it says, on the other hand, glorifying the Lord, that literature is meant to bring about a revolution in the impious life of this world misdirected civilizations. You know that?
I know that. I don't know where it is.
1510, 1511.
Fifth chapter. Okay, thank you. That's where Narad is instructing. I'm looking up Bhagavad Gita in the wrong book. Yeah. No, I wasn't looking up Bhagavad Gita. I was looking up. Okay, let me look and see. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, fifth chapter. Yeah, perfect. But I don't see. Oh, here it is. Yes, there it is. Very well put. Thank you. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Vayasam tirtam is the word. Yes, Vayasam tirtam. Since all perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental, they do not derive any pleasure there. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is of a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Purified men, women, children, even puppies. We have puppies in our class. So a revolution. What is that revolution? The revolution is the revolution of the heart. That when we change our consciousness, we can actually change. That's why Srila Prabhupada, when he was a very young devotee, first meeting his spiritual master, Prabhupada was a revolutionary, and he was a Gandhian, and he was fighting for the British, to overcome the British Raj and to create sovereignty in India. And he told the spiritual master that first we have to remove the British government from our country. How can we talk about spiritual independence when we are politically not even independent? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told Prabhupada that our Krishna consciousness doesn't have to wait for anything. It's not dependent on any material factor. So we can practice Krishna consciousness no matter where we are and under any circumstances. And if we set that foundation first, then we are equipped to deal with any outer situation. Oops, I did a mistake and I lost my verse in the Bhagavatam. Let me go back and find it. So this idea of changing our consciousness, the idea of the inner revolution of the heart is important. And we get that inner revolution of the heart by inviting Krishna's nourishing mercy in the form of the holy names, in the form of Guru, in the form of Shastra, in the form of the merciful glance of the deities. How beautiful is it? In a few minutes we're going to welcome the darshan of Sri Sri Radhamudra. All we have to do is just stand in front of their gaze and just receive their mercy in the form of their darshan. Okay, a few more minutes. Let's finish this purport, and then I want to invite other questions, comments, reflections. This also is like the flourishing of the earth in the rainy season. Actually, one should undergo severe austerities and penances only to achieve spiritual happiness. So now Prabhupada is now developing this concept that we shouldn't just use the results of penances and austerities to enjoy materially, but that we should use it for spiritual happiness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that tapasya or austerity should be accepted for realizing the Supreme Lord. By accepting austerity and devotional service, one regains their spiritual life. And as soon as one regains their spiritual life, they enjoy unlimited bliss. But if someone undertakes austerities and penances for some material gain, it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the results are temporary and are desired only by persons of less intelligence. So there's a couple references here to Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita in that same section that we just read, I believed. That material life should never be... I can't find it here. But there's a verse in Bhagavatam that Prabhupada is referencing that one should never... I believe it's Narada Muni speaking to Vyasadeva, but maybe it's somewhere else, that we should never use our wealth or what we gain in life to increase our material enjoyment, but we should use it to advance ourselves spiritually. And in the Bhagavad Gita, I believe Srila Prabhupada is referencing to the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he's talking about those who are intelligent don't take part in the sources of misery. Yehi sparsha chayam bhoga. I'm not sure the exact. Yeah, here it is. Yehi samsparsha cha bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyan tavanta kontya nateshu ramate buddha. An intelligent person, one who is intelligent, Buddha, does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise person does not delight in them. Material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. Knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures, how can a liberated soul agree to enjoy such false pleasures? So this verse here, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that the results are temporary and desired only by persons of less intelligence. So he's referring to this verse here, chapter 5, verse 22. Yehi samsparsha cha bhoga dukkha yonaya evate Adyanta vanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. Well, what's interesting is that it's mentioning ramate, they take delight. They never take delight because they're intelligent. Why? Because they understand the higher nature of the soul. They understand that I don't want to settle don't want to settle for this. I want to wait for Krishna's monsoon cloud to shower down on my life. Okay, beautiful descriptions of the autumn rainy season. There are some beautiful verses that are taking place here in our chat. Jeffrey Ackler put a purport in the comment of 10.3.34.35 purport. Everyone should be taught to undergo austerity, tapasya. Although it may not be possible to undergo tapasya like that of Prishni and Sutapa, the Shastras has given an opportunity for a method of tapasya very easy to perform, the Sankirtan movement. One cannot expect to undergo tapasya to get Krishna as one child. It's simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Kirtana Eva Krishnasya. One can become so pure that one becomes free from all the contamination of this material world, Mukta Sangha, and goes back home, back to Godhead. So the idea of undergoing austerity in order to progress in spiritual life, not material life. And then of course Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita the different types of austerity that exists, and that it's important that we perform austerity, we do it with proper guidance, that we don't do it just to unnecessarily torture the body or the mind, and that everything we do there is a principle of regulation involved. Krishna also says in the 6th chapter of the Gita that if we eat too much or eat too little, sleep too much, sleep too little, not balance in our recreation, then how can we progress in spiritual life? So the name of the game isn't to just somehow, how can I grind myself on the grinding stone, and the more austere the better. It's not necessarily the case. We have to take into our own psychophysical nature and the particular bodies that we have, and the minds that we have, and understand what is conducive for my spiritual life. This is not the International Society for Austerity Consciousness, the International Society for sensory deprivation. It's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And so always remember Krishna, never forget him. What brings me closer to that remembrance of Krishna that is favorable for my Krishna consciousness? And what takes me away from Krishna, even if it seems like I'm depriving myself of material sense enjoyment and I should be happy. But if it's actually making me more grumpy and making me more inimical towards devotees, and it's causing me to become too tired to perform my sadhana, sangha, and seva, then I have to question whether or not it's conducive for my spiritual life. And that's why we need the counsel of Guru, Sadhu, and Sastra, because if it's just us figuring that out with our mind, it's very tricky. But we need Guru, Sadhu, and Sastra to help us understand the intricacies of what's healthy for my spiritual life and what's not. Okay, Hare Krishna. I took up the whole time. I spoke forever. Sorry, but if people have some questions or comments and they want to leave them in the chat, you can. Or if you want to share, I'd love to hear from you as well. Hare Krishna. We have a couple minutes left.
Okay, I'd like to share my takeaway. I was thinking when you were describing Dayal Gauranga Prabhu, the rock, and you were inviting us to crawl ourselves out from under the rock
Yep.
and to get in the sun, I was thinking, yeah, but there's so much going on under my rock. It's so moist and I feel protected under the rock. It's my shelter. But then when we get in the sun and start sunbathing like Jiva on that spot, then that light is the light of Bhagavatam. That's the light where it's sunbathing in. So it's comfortable. And I was thinking of the turtles and lizards, not the most elevated and evolved forms of life, but we should follow their example and learn from them and get in the sun, in the light of Bhagavatam, together, by the way, together. You know how there's an accumulation of turtles? When you row in your boat in Central Park, you'll see turtles together, sunbathing. So that's us. That's me and Jeffrey Eckler and Andrea and Venetia and Nadi, the big turtle, the big wise turtle, Rich, everybody. So I'm rambling, but
No,
Dalgon,
it's
great
beautiful.
class.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, and I think that yeah, there's many philosophers describe this point even outside of Krishna consciousness. Like Plato would describe the idea of the analogy of the cave, and that there are these people in this dark cave, and there's no light in the cave other than there's a flame that's flickering in the cave, and they can only see the shadows projected onto the wall, and they have no knowledge of what's taking place outside the cave, the actual real experience of life. And when someone from outside the cave tries to come in and explain to them just the experience, the three-dimensional, multicolored experience of life outside the cave, they're like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, everything is right here. This is it. And so sometimes when we're in a darkened state of existence, we think that that's it. And I think that's the power of Maya. That's the power of illusion. Maya isn't just like I have material desires. Maya is the consciousness that makes me think that there's nothing more than this. Maya is the illusion that makes me think that there is so much going on underneath the rock. And it's important for us, Krishna also mentions this very point in the Bhagavad Gita. Oops, let me go ahead and share that right in the very verses that we were also reading. In the 3rd chapter, Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter. Beautiful verses. Krishna says, as the ignorant perform their duties with attachments to result, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant people attached to the fruit of results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spiritual spirit of devotion, engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. And so everyone has their own time in which they come to the realization that it's time to crawl out from under the rock and lay in the sun. So we don't have to necessarily pull them all out, but we can hold space for them until they get there. Okay. We are here. Hare Krishna, everybody. Something I thought would be really beautiful if everybody wants to, when the deities open, put a little flower emoji. We can offer flowers to Krishna. They do that in Chaupati, not virtually, but they have physical flowers that they offer. I thought it'd be a really sweet way we can do in the mornings. Offer our little flower to Krishna. So everyone get your flower emoji ready. Jai Shri Shri Radha Mula Jai Shri Gaura Chandra Yada Shri Bhagavan Guru Param Ki Jai.
Krishna. Aham Padami Eram Kandama Aravinda Vilayatasham Varhavatam Samasitam Purasavaram Andar Prabhu Kamaniya Vishesha Sobha Govinda Hari Purusha Govinda Hari Purusha Govinda Hari Purusha Samaham Bhajami Anani Yasyasadan Viyave Primanti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Maham Bhajami
Thank you very much, Dayal Gauranga. Great class. Thank you, everyone, dear devotees, for crawling from under the rock and showing us your bright faces. Bruce Prabhu, Jamuna Jaya. Jamuna Jaya, is it snowing outside? Venetia, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Would anyone like to reflect or ask a question? This is the afterglow. Bhima Prabhu is here. Nice. Okay. All right. So then let's wrap it up. Jamuna Jai, can you say something?
I really appreciate these verses so much, the beauty and the imagery. And early on, Dayal Gauranga and I couldn't remember the point, but he was talking a lot about tolerance. And that's one of the things that really stuck with me. There's so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam about tolerating. And it really keyed in that there's something my Guru Dev said the other day. He said, we're always talking about tolerating this, tolerating that. We have to remember that people have to tolerate us. And it just that made me laugh. I'm like, oh, I will tolerate the heat and the cold, the happiness and distress, but people got to tolerate me. And so I really, when Dayal brought up that verse again, I was like, right. I'm always thinking about I don't have to tolerate so much, but let me not be a botheration, as the Gita tells us. Let me speak words that are not agitating. Let me not be someone that people just think, oh my God, I've got to tolerate her. So that was a point early on in the class that I really resonated with. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Jamuna, for highlighting that angle. We're not the tolerators, we are the tolerated. So let's stay humble and grateful for devotees association and for Krishna's mercy. That's Sita's little Ram right there. Hare Krishna. And here's the lizard Bhima Prabhu. Enlighten us.
Everything external to us is actually dark and cold and under a rock of our delusion. Listen to me, I'm like a sage. But we just have to remember the smiles of the devotees and just remind ourselves. It's like, I always have to say, I got to remind, like I've got literally 100 yards, a football field worth of shoveling here. I just being able to listen to Bhagavatam class, I don't even notice it. It's a day at the gym, and then I just turn on another class or some music. I enter Prabhu's ripping kirtan. I just go right through it. So it's amazing what we have been given, because I don't know what I'd be doing if I didn't have that to take shelter of, the sun, the warmth from the inside out. That's another thing, from the inside out, that warmth comes. So I really appreciate that. Dayal Gauranga's class was very enlightening that way. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Bhima Prabhu. Yeah, without Prabhupada, we would be under the rock, watching the interplay of shadows, trying to catch shadows. But Srila Prabhupada came and enlightened us all. He pulled us from under the rock, still pulling by the hair sometimes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Come again tomorrow, Adi. Prabhu, thank you for your big smile. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Rich Bhakti. Yes.